All right, we are on. Today we're talking about psychological safety.
Yes. Amber, so listen, I mean, this conversation came through you and I meeting at a virtual conference, right? So I'm Anne Leslie, for those of you who don't know me, obviously Amber does, or we wouldn't be here today. I'm a cybersecurity consultant. I'm based in France. I work for IBM Security. Um, we're not actually talking today about security, but we're talking about something that definitely is relevant in security. And Amber, I mean, over to you. We have kind of domains of expertise that are adjacent, but not necessarily the same.
Exactly. And that's really how our friendship started is we met at a virtual event and decided to reach out and have a conversation. And we've had a series of conversations and decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we actually recorded these and see if it resonates with anyone else? And as stated, my name is Amber and I am here in the United States and I'm the founder of a group called the Pathwayz Group. And so we work more on that, the human side of team performance. So yeah,
So
there's a lot of correlation between the two.
for sure, one of my kind of passions, I think, in cybersecurity is around the place of people. People are often identified as being the weakest element, and it really grinds my gears because I really deeply believe that we're doing security of all types, but particularly cybersecurity. It has technical aspects which are fundamental, but deep down, I think we're all doing it because we're trying to protect what matters to people. Um, and a lot of the conversations Amber and I have been having have been around how are people performing? What matters to people? What allows people to thrive? And particularly in this context around COVID, right? So she and
Mhm.
I, remember, we met at this virtual conference, didn't know each other at all, but realized that we had centers of interest that were similar and connected. And that's what's just kind of amazing right now is with the internet and in spite of COVID, we're still finding that the desire people have for community and for sharing and for collaboration, it's still there. And we're finding ways. So we're finding ways across borders in spite of adversity. And one of the topics that really kind of inspired, I think, both of us is, we were talking about, how are we? How are things going? And we had a very real conversation very quickly, which was, good days, bad days. Things are going well, we're managing. And we began to talk about, well, what's impacting how we're feeling and what's impacting how we're managing to drive things forward and keep things moving and feel a sense of satisfaction. And that's when the topic of psychological safety came into the conversation.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And and every time that we had, these conversations, it differs, a little bit. Even right before this call, we were talking about the weather and how that's been affecting our everyday and the people that we're speaking to. Yeah, as you said, people are longing for relationships and connections and conversations and just a feeling of that human element being brought back to our everyday lives. And so that has been so inspiring even to meet with people all over the world while we're still virtual and still have that same connection and that same sense of wanting to have that relationship no matter where we are in the world, even in the midst of this pandemic and especially in the midst of this pandemic and in COVID-19. So yeah, we had talked a lot about psychological safety and what exactly is that word, are those words. I feel like it's heard quite a bit, we say it in passing, but what does that actually mean? To me, it really means that sense of being able to be your authentic self, having the freedom to be genuine within your workplace and within your work team, and feeling the ability, the freedom to not only be yourself, but also to contribute to the conversation without having that fear of Is that going to be ridiculed? Is it going to be criticized? Is it going to be disregarded? Are my challenges going to be heard? Is my contribution going to be heard? And that is that is revolutionary within a team
Oh,
in
absolutely.
itself.
Yeah, I mean, so the term, for those of you who may not have heard it, right, it's a professor called Amy Edmondson at Harvard who did a lot of research about this, but it kind of hit prime time because of some research that Google did about what makes the difference between teams that really perform and teams that just kind of chug along and exist. And the thing that was identified, this kind of X factor, is psychological safety. And it's really important. And I think Amy Edmondson, in her research, is sort of wants to make sure that it doesn't get misrepresented, right? Psychological safety is not this fuzzy feeling of we're going to wrap everybody up in cotton wool and tell everybody that it's all okay. It's exactly what you were saying, Amber. It's this feeling, and it very much is a feeling that I can turn up in my job and it's okay to say, for example, today, bleh, I'm not having a great day. It's okay to express your opinion. It's okay to say respectfully what's on your mind, but without fear of retribution. And that this idea of you bring people together who want to create something great, like this shared mission, a shared objective, and that you're always trying to contribute to make that idea the best it can be. And that you're comfortable with the idea that there will be friction, but friction doesn't jeopardize the relationship. That the relationships that you have with your colleagues and your peers, and even with maybe your hierarchy, that the relationship is never in question because there's a foundation of trust, which means any challenge that's respectful and with the objective of making the idea better, the outcome better, that's okay. And I think that's the real difference, is that challenging and causing that friction. A lot of us have been conditioned to think that friction is bad, like disagreement should be avoided. No, actually, this is what makes teams thrive, is when you can challenge each other, when you can bring somebody else to see, but maybe you haven't seen that. And that it's okay, that absolutely this kind of creative destruction, this sort of challenging of ideas, that's what actually drives things forward. But it's, I think, absolutely the opposite of what a lot of us will have experienced as social conditioning growing up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing that I really found extraordinary about that entire study was at the beginning, they asked, okay, what do you think will be the outcomes of what's going to make a higher performing team? And very few people said psychological safety. They're looking at structures, they're looking at, okay, who's on the team? What's the talent in the team? What's the processes that we have? There's all of these other things. So it's not as intuitive sometimes, especially within our leadership, as we might think. We're looking at, okay, who's on our team? What structures do we have? What processes are we using? What resources do we have? But that psychological safety, as that study proved, was actually the indicator of a higher performing team. And so it's something that might not come as intuitive as we might assume. And so that means that we have to be intentional. It's not going to, psychological safety does not happen by accident. It's going to happen through intentional action, and through intentional behavior. And so, yes, like what you said, sometimes we're trained to say, oh, I don't want to engage in that conflict. We don't want to do these things. But in reality, it's that intentional behavior and that intentional conversation that is going to create that a higher performing team and that sense of safety within an organization, within a team. And so it's not, even within that study, that was not the initial, what is the difference between a higher performing team and a lesser performing team? That was not the initial uh, hypothesis of a lot of people that were involved in that study. And so it was even a surprise at that point, but it just emphasizes even more how important it is to be intentional
Yeah.
and to be very action focused in building psychological safety within our teams.
Absolutely. And, I think maybe the corollary to being intentional is being consistently intentional,
Ooh,
right?
yes.
So it's not just about like a one off action, and even more in the current context that we have, right? So
Mhm.
I think even in teams where they are, generally before COVID, feeling secure within themselves, they have their norms, that they've got their groove, there has to still be a way of replenishing that. So finding a way of being intentional and then replicating it and doing it consistently. And that's
Mm,
where there's a role, I think, a really critical role for leadership, but also enabling the people who are kind of like the cultural ambassadors that may not necessarily be called out on an org chart, but you certainly need to know who they are. And now
mm,
more so than ever, because they're the connective tissue in remote teams.
mhm,
They're the people who kind of notice the weak signals of somebody tuning out, somebody who mightn't be doing too well, somebody whose attitude might be a bit off,
mhm,
and trying to find a way of intentionally enabling those people. So leaders, for sure, they have a role, and that is called out by virtue of where they sit in the org chart. But I think now more so than ever, leaders need to be very tuned in to who are the people within their teams that may not be identified as managers or leaders, but who are certainly being that pivot and making
mhm.
sure that the safety is still there, the connectivity is still there, and I mean relational connectivity. That's super key right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that inconsistency, the consistency or inconsistency has a huge impact on the safety and the trust. And we see this even with interpersonal relationships of, okay, if I know someone is going to be cross consistently, at least I know what I'm going to get. If someone's going to be, say, hey, we want you to be vulnerable, we want you to feel comfortable being your authentic self up until that point, then maybe not, and then maybe not in that situation, maybe not here, but in this one situation, yes. That's not how it has to be consistent. You can't say you can be authentic in this area. We want you to be honest in this area, but in this area, no. You have to be consistent within that because that's wherever that trust can really take a toll. And that's whenever that feeling of safety to challenge and to contribute can really take a toll. And so, yeah, I love what you said of yes, being consistent, consistently intentional. And yeah, like you alluded to earlier, it's something that we do have that we're building up throughout a long period of time. Like any relationship, trust does take time, and building psychological safety within an organization is not going to happen through one workshop or one event or one luncheon. It actually is going to take a long time. And so the results is dramatically seen over time, but it might not be seen in the first week or in the first quarter or even in the first year. I mean, so it's going to take a while to actually see those dramatic results that do impact the organization.
Absolutely. And it's, the an endeavor, maybe like a labor of love, building it up, but it can be destroyed, maybe
No.
not in an instant, but it can be destroyed so quickly. So neglecting it, even if you have, got a strong foundation, neglecting it and assuming, again, relationships, they need to be tended to and nurtured. Psychological safety is the same thing. Absolutely critical for organizations to grow and thrive and adapt. But again, the risk of laboring the point, it has to be intentional, and it has to be done on a regular basis with thought put into it. Um, and it's just got more and more important right now. The difference between organizations who have the sort of the metaphorical well of psychological safety that they can draw on to allow them to get through the worst of maybe the COVID transition, you need to fill the well up again, right? And it's, that trying to find a way of making sure that that feeling that people have, even though they are socially distanced, their environments are different, they may have challenges at home, their organizations may be changing. How can you make people feel safe? And the feelings, we neglect it a lot. Feelings are sort of, let's not talk about them too much. They have no place in a professional setting. Hell yeah, they do. We operate on an emotional plane way more than we operate on a logical plane. And a lot of our bad decision making comes from supposing that we don't. So a lot of this, we need to allow people to turn up authentically. We need to legitimize feeling, right? We need to legitimize feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling angry, but of course, finding appropriate ways of dealing with that. But yeah, I mean, this psychological safety, I think it is talked about in the media. I would love to see organizations embrace it and make it real for the people within their organizations, so that the vocabulary that we have and the tooling that comes around it and the knowledge, right? The knowledge it's not just anecdotal. This is this is stuff worth
Real
embracing.
life.
Yeah. And I think people ask me, why do I bother caring about this? I care about it because we spend so much time at work that it has to be something worthwhile, right? Our days cannot be spent in futility. Our days should not feel like we're pushing water up a mountain. And I am convinced that when you bring people together around something that they feel matters, and you give them conditions where they feel like they can be themselves, I truly believe that there can be massive satisfaction and pleasure from work.
Oh, absolutely. And it has a direct impact on outcomes, as you alluded to. And it's something that I remember whenever I very first came into the workplace. One of my mentors came up to me and told me, they go, Amber, you are more than likely going to spend more time with this work family than you do your actual family. You want to make sure that that's a place that is enjoyable and a place that is supportive. Um, and that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks as a very young person coming into the office of, wow, I'm going to spend more time here more than likely than with my actual family. And so knowing those aspects about people's lives and how that affects and how that affects them is really, really important. And so it does have an impact on actual outcomes as well. If you have someone that is going through some family, if they're going through family things, if they're going through personal things, if they're going through different turmoil or excitement, if they're excited about getting ready for a new baby, or if they're getting ready to graduate, or if they're getting if they're a wedding, if these are exciting things too, then the difference of, okay, where is your mindset, where is your focus, how can we adjust based off of what's going on. And I think that there was this idea of, okay, personal's over here, you have your life and then you have work, and it's a balance this way, but that's not what it is. They're actually hand in hand, and it's more of a wrestling match trying to figure out, okay, where is that balance going to be. And so has a real impact on, like what you said, on mistakes. You can look at error rates based on psychological safety. You look at retention, you look at communication, you look at the actual outcomes that have an impact. But even more than that, you have the real relationships that you have moving forward. So yeah, so there's a huge impact on just the outcomes of wanting to be at work, based off of that psychological safety, actually feeling like, is this my work family or are they my work colleagues? And that's a big difference between saying, okay, these are my, these are colleagues. Yeah, we're here together, and this is my work family. It's a place that I feel supported. I feel encouraged. So, yeah. So I guess moving forward, the action steps Any insights on, action steps that we can take to create a more psychologically safe environment?
One of the things that I've noticed is being brave enough to have a conversation.
Mm,
And it sounds almost stupidly simplistic, but the great things that I have seen happen in companies always start with somebody being brave enough to have a conversation that none of their predecessors or peers or hierarchical superiors had bothered or dared to have.
mhm,
And what I'm meaning in this sense would be, you know, either it could be a manager or even just a, a team member with a bit
mhm,
more of kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, just saying, I've noticed something. Can we have a team meeting about it?
mhm,
You know, um, and checking in with people and saying, right, we are creating an intentional safe space, and we're going to talk about how we are with each other,
mhm,
and we're going to brainstorm and give everybody the opportunity to put up on like a virtual mural board or some kind of collaborative workspace. What would you like people to do more of? What would you like people to do less of?
mhm,
I would do a better job if. And having just this safe space where you're able to say things that you may not be able to say normally. And it takes good facilitation, right? You do need somebody who will be able to draw that out of people so that they are willing to contribute, they're willing to share what's on their minds. But somebody who has good facilitation skills and who can create that feeling, I keep saying feeling, of it's okay to tell the truth. It's okay to articulate and put words on what you're really thinking.
mhm.
And then what I've noticed is that when that happens, there's a kind of a magic energy, which is people start looking at each other going, oh, wow, you think that too? I thought I was all alone. And there's nothing, well, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but I have felt that, right? Where I realize, okay, it's not just me. And suddenly, when you don't feel alone, even if like it's maybe 2 people out of a group of 15, the not feeling alone, that's already a huge step. I'm not a freak. I'm not unprofessional. I'm not weak. Because there's a lot of, when we're not feeling good, there's a lot of shame, right? There's a kind of a feeling of shame associated with it, which is I am intrinsically something,
Mhm,
something negative.
mhm.
And creating this space where people realize they can say things and not be judged, and they can say things and feel seen and heard and welcomed.
Mhm.
And the
Yes.
feeling of togetherness. It's a quote from somewhere, and I can't remember. It might be Simon Sinek, somebody like that, who said, a team is not a group of people who work together. It's a group of people who trust each other.
Mm.
And I actually really like your idea of family, although not all family members trust each other. But, this idea of trust is fundamental, right? Is that, have these people got my back?
Mhm,
Even if I screw up, even if I'm having an off day, even if I disagree and I'm being
mhm.
antagonistic, have
Right.
they still got my back? Do they still want me? Will they bring me back in? That, you know, that's what we need
Mhm,
as a foundation to perform. We are professionals, sure, but we're frail, fragile humans fundamentally.
mhm.
And that sense of belonging, community, tribe, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm wanted and welcomed. So having that first conversation as the foundation for being, bringing in a new behavioral norm, which is I can speak my truth and I won't be rejected.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's a great action step. And I'll take it one step further of taking action based off of conversations. Not saying, "Hey," and we've seen this, right? Of, "Hey, we're going to take a employee input survey, or we're going to ask asking, and then everyone puts in their input and then nothing is done.
Yeah.
And so then there's a sense of, hey, we let you talk, and then there's no action. And so there is a sense of saying, okay, begins, yes, step one of, okay, we're going to have a conversation and we're going to have an action plan based off of the input that we have. That does not necessarily mean that we're going to do everything that is suggested. That is not saying that, but that's saying that we are prepared to take action based off of input that we've received. We're encouraging input, and we're not just saying, hey, speak into the void, we share your voice. We're saying, no, we're actually here to truly listen. And so, yeah, it's that process of, yeah, asking people, and opening the door to a conversation. I love the examples of tough questions that you gave. Yeah, you gave some really good examples of some tough questions. And with that comes a lot of responsibility of, okay, are you ready to take action based off of that? And if you're not ready to take action, that's okay. Get in a position to take action before you have the conversation. That's a big question to ask. I've led some teams where it's a question of, okay, we want to ask for input, but we're not in a position yet to take action. So let's position ourselves to actually be in a place to listen to the input that we're going to receive. So that's a huge thing. And then I do want to be cognizant of our time, but one more thing is actually asking people about their their life as well. Sometimes the simplest action step that you can take today to begin cultivating a culture of psychological safety is asking people about their week, asking people about their weekend. Hey, how how are things going? And genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
Say, how are things going, and actually open that door to a conversation. And then, like with those tough conversations, follow up. Be prepared to take action. If you're asking someone about their weekend and they tell you about something exciting, be prepared Monday or Tuesday to come back and say, hey, how was that? And have a follow-up. So there's an action step that comes with those conversations as well. And every single one of those moments, they're not big. This is not, these are single conversations. There's small wins and small steps that lead to a big impact over time. So filling that well, or filling that bucket, or building that trust, it's not one giant event. It is a series of and a long series of little conversations and little events that lead to a really big impact.
So I think we can probably summarize it as in a commitment to intentional connection
Ooh.
and commitment to consistent action.
Mm.
It's consistent, it's intentional, but this thing, I'm doing it with my hands here. It's wanting to connect and being radically curious about and caring, right? Curiosity and caring is exactly what you're saying. Checking in with people, making sure you're staying connected, doing it on purpose, and doing it consistently.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. I'm glad that we actually were able to record this. Yeah, and I'm so glad that we were actually able to meet, and we've been building this relationship over the last few months. And so I look forward to continued conversations
Me too.
in the future.
Yeah, this was a blast. Definitely do this again.
Yes, absolutely. So I hope that everyone found this valuable and you're able to walk away with some action steps that you can take to increase the psychological safety within your workplace today. So yeah, I think Anne said it just perfectly of, yeah, consistent connection and consistent action and behavior. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
rest of the day.
everybody. Thanks for your time.